Well, welcome everybody to our webinar, Word Finding in Memory, what is typical and what's not. We are so delighted to have faculty from Malloy University's Department of Speech and Language Pathology with us to really answer so many of the questions we have about what aphasia is. So I'm delighted Gloria LeBeau is also with us. Gloria and I are both from the Freeburg JCC. I am the director of our dementia programs and services. And Gloria, as many of you know, is our director of social work. And many of you have worked with her in our Parkinson's programs as well. So please, Joanne.
Hello. Hi, my name is Joanne Asher. I am the clinic director of the Malloy University Speech, Language, and Hearing Center. And it is my pleasure to be here today to discuss word finding and memory with you.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Brooks. I am an assistant professor at Malloy University, and I'm also a speech language pathologist. I've worked as an SLP for the past 17 years, and my main population of people that I work with are people with strokes or dementia, people that have difficulty with word finding and memory issues, and we're going to talk about all that stuff today. So I'm happy to be here.
Okay.
Well,
all right. So I'm going to talk today about what is typical and what is normal in terms of aging and our cognitive skills. We all experience this. So this is, all very typical. So one thing that you may notice is that you may not be able to remember experience that you had many years ago, and that's something called episodic memory. You may have your spouse or your loved one say, "Oh, come on, you remember that," and then they'll talk about it and then it may come back to you, but they may have to explain it a little bit more. Another thing that we see in normal aging is a decrease in executive functioning skills. So that's really an umbrella term of all the mental processes that we have and need to do in order to function in life. So it helps us plan things. It helps us prioritize, problem solve, recall, attend, and do things all at the same time, cooking dinner while you're listening to the weather report. So I don't know about you, but I know when I'm driving, my adult children still make fun of me because I have to turn down the radio in order to see better, especially in the dark. I don't know if anyone does that too, but it really does help me. And that's all about that multitasking, that I can't listen to that radio while I'm trying to concentrate and see the road ahead of me. Another area that we see that declines with aging is working memory. And that's a different type of memory than that episodic memory. It's more of a short-term memory skill, but a very specific memory skill. So it's working with information for a short amount of time, but doing something with that information. So the example that I give you is when somebody's giving you a telephone number to dial, and you have to store that in your memory bank very shortly, but also you need to work with that number by dialing it or storing it in your phone. I see a decrease in my working memory, and I am in my later 50s. I started seeing this in, I would say, about the age of 50. And when I saw it happening was when I was listening to Waze or my maps on my phone while driving, over the George Washington. And Siri is giving me all these directions to do when you got to stay in the left lane and go to, I-95 South. And it was just so much to store while I was doing something. And I was having difficulties with it. The next thing that we see is, let's go back one.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Just the speed in which we process information. So sometimes if somebody's speaking very quickly, we may not be able to, process what they're saying as well as we had when we were younger. All right, now we can go on. So what do we do about this? This is normal, right? This is typical of all adults. So don't be afraid to use compensatory strategies. We all use compensatory strategies. We all make grocery lists. We all jot down a to-do lists. So we're going to talk about what we have planned for October, but we could use more compensatory strategies to help us do this, to help us through this normal decline in our cognitive skills. All right. So that's more about cognition and memory. Another area that's affected by normal aging is our language skills. So just to tell you the difference between speech and language, speech is the production of our sounds. It's our articulation, our pronunciation, our voice. And language are our words and our sentences and our narratives and things like that, our social skills. Not all areas of language are affected by normal aging, but one area that is particularly affected is vocabulary and what we call word retrieval. So we've all experienced throughout our lives this tip of the tongue phenomenon, where you know the name of something and you say, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. I just can't think of it. I had that today with the word impale. Don't ask me why I was talking about the word impale, but I could not think of that word today. And thank God my listener helped me out with that. So that's normal, but you may see that this is increasing. It happens more and more as we age. Another thing is called the slip of the tongue. And that's more of like, where you're like, you went to say kitchen, but you say lichen or something like that. You just pronounce it differently, but it's language based. We also have decreased ability to retrieve new words and learn new words. So learning new vocabulary may not be as easy as it was when we were younger. And what this sounds like in our connected speech, it changes the fluency and the smoothness of our speech. So we'll have more fillers and things like that. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. So one strategy that I can give you right now is if you can't think of that target word, such as impale today, I described it to my listener and I used some gestures to that. And that's how she helped me out. I just experienced something with my family where they couldn't think of the word shoehorn because it wasn't something that they use every day. So described it and I knew exactly what they were talking about. All right, we can go on.
Sorry, it's like frozen. Hang on one second. Oh, there we go. Got it.
Okay. Another area of language that could be affected by normal aging is what we call syntax. And syntax is a fancy word for referring to word order to make well-formed sentences. And there are certain rules that go about in all different languages. So in normal aging, how that could be affected is that you may have difficulties understanding longer complex sentences, as well as producing them. And that, again, is going to be noted by a lot of fillers and ums and uhs, and maybe more repetitions are needed. So a tip that you can take away today is that if your loved one is having difficulties with processing longer, complex sentences, just speak in shorter sentences at a slower rate. So if I was going to break that down, I want you to speak in short sentences. I want you to speak at a slower rate. So I'm saying the same information, I'm just kind of segmenting it. Okay, we can go on. We're not going to go into the anatomy and physiology of this too much, but I just want to explain a little bit about why this happens. So first of all, was very shocking when I read it recently, is that we have a decrease in our brain volume as early as age 30. That's early. So as we age, several changes occur in the brain. So what happens is our neurons, our brain cells, they start shrinking. We have a loss or decrease in the myelination, which is the covering that kind of helps transmit neuron, transmissions. We have reductions in the dendrites, which are those purple things on the left side of the figure. And those are kind of like the fingers that connect each nerve to each nerve. We also have a decline in the white matter in the frontal lobe, which is where our language is. And there's a decrease in neurotransmitters, which is the chemicals that help transfer that nerve communication. And one example of that you may have heard is dopamine. All right, we'll go on. So not everyone is going to have these changes to the degree that another person may have. It's going to differ from person to person. And an older, healthy adult may be able to use another part of the brain to help out another area that is being affected by this. That's called neuroplasticity. The ability to have that flexibility may have a positive effect on the cognitive changes that you may experience. So one tip that I will give you is to try to learn a new skill, especially one that requires bilateral or two hands. So 2 years ago, I decided that I was going to start playing the piano, and I take piano lessons on every Tuesday at 5:30, and the people before me are young children about the age of 6 and 7, and the mothers in front of me one day said, "See, you can learn something new at any age," which I kind of laughed about, but I find that it's really helping my mental capacity and my cognitive skills. I feel that I could concentrate a little bit more. I feel that I could feel my brain working. That's that. One other thing, we'll go on to the next slide. So Dr. Brooks is going to talk about what is not typical. So, she'll get into that more, but when should you consult a medical professional? Certainly, if you see a sudden decline in your cognitive or language skills, you need immediate medical attention. It could be that you're maybe having a stroke, God forbid. If a family member, a close family member, notices significant changes in your skills, it's time to talk to your physician about that, especially if it's in more than one area. So they're seeing a decrease in your language, that you can't think of the words as well, you're not remembering as well, you're having difficulty sequencing for some tasks, then you need to speak to your primary care physician. that person is probably going to refer you to a neurologist for more involved testing. And then the intervention may be through somebody like us, who are speech language pathologists and can teach you some strategies in order to work on this. Okay, so we'll save time at the end for some questions, and I will hand this over to Dr. Brooks.
Thank you, Joanne. That was an excellent overview of what's normal. But now I want to talk to you all about what's not normal. And I'm going to talk about something called aphasia, which some of you may have heard about, some of you may have not. Aphasia has been in the news a little bit with celebrities in past few years. You may have heard of Bruce Willis coming out to the public and saying he has aphasia, talk show host Wendy Williams, and even a few years further back, Senator Gabby Giffords, who had a traumatic brain injury and had aphasia. So these are some people that you might have heard about this term, but I want to talk about it today, and I want to show you some video examples to give you a better idea of what this is all about. So aphasia is an acquired communication or language disorder. And what I mean by acquired is that this is a person who previously had no issues with their language. It's not something that an individual is born with. So it's acquired. And it typically impacts a person's ability to verbalize. It could impact their ability to understand what's being said to them. And sometimes, and often, it also impacts a person's ability to read and write. So a lot of different language modalities can be impacted by aphasia. The most common cause of aphasia is a stroke. So 25 to up to 40% of people who experience a stroke will have some degree of aphasia. Some other causes are traumatic brain injuries or even brain tumors, and some neurologic conditions are some other causes. So it's pretty common in about a third of individuals that experience some form of head injury will have aphasia. Another cause of aphasia may be from a progressive neurologic disease. So some examples are diagnoses like frontotemporal degeneration or cortical basal degeneration, which is just pretty much degeneration of brain tissue in different parts of the brain. And this is a little bit of a different type of aphasia, and it's called primary progressive aphasia. And really what that is it's a person that's experiencing noticeable word finding problems that gets progressively worse over time. And I don't mean over days, I mean over years. So it's an ongoing loss of language abilities with otherwise preserved cognitive skills. And this does impact people at a younger age than typical dementia, and usually occurs in about the 50s or the 60s. So like I said, it has a slow onset and it's caused by a neurodegenerative condition, which is different than when someone has aphasia from neurological insult like a stroke or traumatic brain injury. So when somebody has aphasia from a stroke, we're not going to anticipate that it's going to get worse over time. In fact, the role of the speech language pathologist is to help in rehabilitating and getting that language back. When we, as the SLP or speech language pathologist, work with primary progressive aphasia, it's a little bit different of an approach because we're not trying to restore as much as we're trying to help the person to compensate. But there are things that can be done to help people with this particular type of aphasia. So just to give you some facts about aphasia so that you understand how common it is. And so there's over 2 million people in the United States that have this diagnosis, and 180,000 will develop it each year. There's 200,000 new cases each year, and that's expected to rise as the population ages. People are living longer. Medical advancements are allowing us to live longer, but we are seeing more and more cases because of that. Something that I always find interesting to tell people is that aphasia is more common than cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, or spinal cord injury. But a lot of people, most people, have never heard of it. So what I want to do now is go through different types of aphasia. And this is just to give you an idea of the range of severity and the type of issues that people could have that is not considered to be typical. And by watching these videos, it should give you, a good example of the different types. So the first one I want to talk about is called global aphasia. And this is the most severe form of aphasia. Typically, the people that I've worked with in my practice as a speech pathologist that have had this diagnosis, they've sustained a pretty significant brain injury. The person produces few recognizable words, and they understand very little of what is said to them. They usually cannot read or write either. So this, like I said, is the most severe. And I could tell you from my experience, the most difficult to rehabilitate because the person has difficulty understanding and expressing. So I want to show you an example, and what the speech pathologist in this video is doing is asking the patient, the client, to name celebrities. So she's showing him different pictures on the computer screen.
How about
Nay, nay, aye.
4 of them? And they're singers, we know that. Good start. Are they the Rolling Stones?
BB.
Yes or no?
Nay, BB. Aye.
Is that yes or no?
Aye, aye.
Okay, you don't know.
Aye.
Okay.
So the picture that she was showing him was a picture of the Beatles. And he was engaged, he was attempting to communicate, but I'm sure everybody here would agree that nothing he was producing was intelligible speech. He was making sounds, but there was no meaning. And even when she was asking him to point to yes or no, he was just kind of moving his fingers over the paper, but not pointing or using that as a way to communicate. So, like I said, the most severe form of aphasia, very difficult to work with, but can be rehabilitated over time, but does take a lot of work and time for people to recover some of their language. And a lot of the clients I've worked with this diagnosis didn't recover fully because of the extent of the brain damage. The next one I want to talk about is called Broca's aphasia. This type of aphasia more impacts the person's speech output in that when they're trying to talk, their speech sounds really effortful and almost choppy and halting, like they can't get the words out, but they know what they want to say. This is different than when you or I have that tip of the tongue feeling that Joanne was talking about that we all experience. You'll notice when I show you the video that this is quite different. With this type of aphasia, people typically understand, I'd say 95% of what is being said to them. Understanding is not the issue. It's getting the words out. So I want to show you this example. And she's also, the speech pathologist is asking him to name pictures of celebrities.
Not how you talk.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Do you remember True Grit?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Did you see the new one?
I don't.
I love the new one.
Really?
Really.
Okay.
I thought it was super.
Well, this, because, oh, man, oh, man, this,
I'm getting the sense that you really like John Wayne.
yes.
I figured.
So this man also, you can hear, had limited verbal output, but there was some words there that you were able to understand. He was using a lot of gesture to try to communicate what he was trying to say to the speech pathologist, like mimicking holding a gun because the picture was of John Wayne. So she knew that he knew what the picture was or who was in the picture, but he just couldn't verbalize it. One other thing you notice is that he has weakness of his limb. Do you see how his right hand is kind of clutched to his chest? That's very typical of somebody with this type of aphasia because the damage to the brain is very close to the area of our brain that controls the movement of our limbs. So very often when I work with clients with this diagnosis, they also have weakness on one side of the body.
Okay.
The next type of aphasia I want to talk about is called Wernicke's aphasia. And this is a very interesting type of aphasia. It's interesting because the speech is very easily produced, meaning the words flow out quite fine, but the content of what is being said is not there. We call it jargon speech or word salad. It's just kind of like a mishmash of words, if you will. And the problem with that is that another issue that people with this type of aphasia have is they have difficulty understanding what's being said to them, whether it's spoken word or written word. And this is caused by damage more posterior, more in the rear part of the brain in the area called the temporal lobe. So I want to show you an example of a man named Byron who has this type of aphasia. And I want you to take note of the words that are flowing out and see if you can make sense of it. And then also his responses to some of the questions that are being asked of him.
Hi, Byron. How are you?
I'm happy. Are you pretty? You look good.
What are you doing today?
We stayed with the water over here at the moment and talked with the people for them over there. They're diving for them at the moment. They'll save in the moment. He'll have water very soon for him. With luck for him.
So we're on a cruise and we're about to
We
get to
will
Juneau.
store it right here and they'll save their hands right there for them.
And what were we just doing with the iPad?
Right at the moment, they don't show a darn thing.
With the iPad that we were doing.
From-
Like here?
I'd like my change for me and change hands for me. It would happen. I would talk with Donna sometimes. We're out with them. Other people are working with them. I'm very.
So I think you get the idea that Byron is speaking, but I couldn't make much sense out of most of what he said, except right there at the end, he said, I speak with Donna sometimes, and Donna is the name of his wife. So that sentence made sense. But otherwise, she was asking him questions and he was not responding appropriately to the questions. Like she said, what was the thing we were doing with the iPad? And he looked out the window and said, not a thing over there at the moment. So the response was not related to what she asked, nor did it make any sense. So also a tricky type of aphasia to work on, because imagine trying to work on something when the person themselves isn't really aware that what they're saying isn't making sense. So intense speech therapy is needed for this type of aphasia as well. Now, the last type of aphasia I want to talk about is called anomic aphasia. And this is a bit more like what Joanne was talking about earlier with this tip of the tongue experience, because the main issue with anomic aphasia is word finding. But it's not like when you or I can't think of a word or we have a slip of the tongue once in a while. This is happening pretty much every sentence, that this person is getting stuck and hung up and can't supply the word that they want to say, although they know what it is they want to say. And they're also very aware that they're making errors. Unlike the previous video, Wernicke's aphasia, where the person is not aware that what they're saying isn't making any sense. So people with anomic aphasia tend to get very frustrated. Because they know exactly what they want to say and they understand everything that's said to them. And, you know, I'm not showing you these videos for anybody to leave this talk today diagnosing themselves with a type of aphasia, but this would be the one that if you're probably thinking, oh, I can't think of the word sometimes. Well, if it's to this extent, of course, like Joanne mentioned, you would seek a medical professional and have a full evaluation by a speech language pathologist that could help you to determine, is this normal, typical, or is this not? But the woman that I'm going to show you in the video did have a stroke, and this type of aphasia can occur from strokes in various parts of the brain. It's not really from one specific area. And you'll see, so what she's doing in this video is retelling the Cinderella story, which is a task that speech pathologists ask people to do just to see how they can tell a story, think of the words, tell the order of things that happened. So I want you to hear how she's able to retell the Cinderella story.
Hear your Cinderella.
Well, they're saying, I'm saying that there's two evil twins. Oh, then maybe not twins, but they're sisters. Oh, and then, and the mom is nice for them, but she doesn't like the, oh, I think the other one is adopted or something. And she's, so she has to clean all the fireplace and do the bad stuff like the cleaning and cleaning everything for the sisters. She's a maid there, but then oh, what's the lady that comes and gives you wishes? She came and she gave them the wishes to go to a ball. It was
So you're getting the idea. You're hearing the she's thinking, she's trying to get the words out. You even heard some errors, like when she said the word sisters, she said stisters or something like that. So those are what we call paraphasias, certain errors that people make where they put an extra sound in and things like that. So this is a pretty good example of somebody with anomic aphasia. So that's an overview of different types of aphasia. And like I mentioned, they typically do occur from a stroke, but can occur from progressive neurologic diseases as well. So just in general, some things that people that have communication disorder like aphasia may find it difficult to express their wants and needs, especially like when put on the spot at a restaurant, when they have to order and maybe in front of the waiter. They might have a hard time taking part in a group conversation where there's like a lot of people talking. Maybe if there's background noise, that might make it more difficult for them to communicate as well. As I mentioned, people with aphasia may have problems with writing. A lot of times, whatever their speech, their spoken language is like, is what their written language is like. So if somebody, for example, has anomic aphasia and they're getting stuck on their words when they're talking, they're typically going to have the same problem when they're writing down, like filling out a form or trying to write a note to somebody. Reading could be a problem. Anywhere from reading a book to a magazine to a website to reading signs when driving. Using a phone might be difficult, as well as using numbers and money. Now, the loved ones, the communication partners of people with aphasia might find it hard to slow down their own speech. Something I work on daily. I talk very fast, so I'm purposely trying to speak slower when I present. But also when I'm working with my clients with aphasia, I want to give them more time to process what I'm saying. So that's something I find that communication partners find it a little tricky to do, or resisting finishing the person's sentence. You know, like when you kind of know what they're going to say, especially if it's maybe a spouse or a partner that you know really well and you kind of know what they're trying to say and you want to finish their sentence. It's hard for people to not do that. And just to change the way they communicate in general. We really all do take communication for granted. I know I did until I started studying it and working with communication disorders every day in my career. We really find it hard to change the way we communicate until we really have to. Communication partners might find it hard to keep a conversation going with a loved one that has difficulty getting their words out. Or just understanding what the person is saying might be hard for them. So just some tips. These are tips for partners of people that have issues communicating, people that have aphasia. A big thing is getting the person's attention before you speak to them. I always tell my clients, I tell the spouse, like, don't talk to the back of each other's heads. Don't talk from one room to the other. Make sure you're looking at each other. It really does help with processing language and understanding. Minimizing background noise, like blasting TVs and radios and other people if it's very loud. Keeping your own voice at a normal level When people have aphasia, I notice their loved ones tend to speak really loud in thoughts that it's going to help their loved one to understand, but that doesn't do anything. So keeping your voice at a normal level and keeping communication simple but adult, and always confirming that you're communicating successfully by asking the person yes, no questions. Oh, you're telling me you want to go to this place for lunch? Is that right? Yes? No? Just confirming that what you're understanding is correct. We want to try to give people with aphasia the time to speak, try to give them time to get their words out, trying not to finish their sentences, like I said. Sometimes people with aphasia can be encouraged to use strategies, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but things like drawing or using gestures to help them communicate, even a pen and a paper. And I always tell loved ones to repeat information when necessary, just to help a person with aphasia to understand. Now, for the actual person that has word finding issues or has aphasia, there are a lot of strategies out there. And it's part of what I do as a speech language pathologist and what I teach my students at Molloy University to do in our clinic is to work with different strategies. So one, just to give you an example, is that people with aphasia can try to write or draw what it is that they're trying to say, even if it's just writing the first letter of the word that they're trying to get out. Sometimes it either helps them to get the word out or it helps the listener to understand. So that's just an example of something that we kind of can train people and help people to practice using. And what we found is that practicing using strategies in a group setting is really beneficial, especially in a group of people that have a similar issue to you. Excuse me. Now, there's also some tips for people that have memory issues for a variety of reasons. Some ways that we can help people with memory deficits is by helping them to remediate by doing certain cognitive exercises. There's software out there, things on the iPhone and iPad that can be used to help improve the person's attention, focus, organization, as well as their memory skills. Another thing we do that's very common, especially when I work with clients with dementia or just any memory concerns, is helping them to find ways to compensate for these cognitive communication changes that they're experiencing. And a lot of times what we're having them do is use what we call external strategies, which are things like certain apps on the phone, calendars, memory books that we can put together, organizers, to help the person to improve their day-to-day memory and some of those other executive functioning skills that Joanne mentioned earlier that do normally decline as we get older, but especially if someone has a diagnosis like dementia, they're going to have issues with these particular cognitive skills. So there's a ton of resources out there that I wanted to show you. If you know somebody with aphasia, if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, this is only a few, but these are a lot of the resources that are out there, like the National Aphasia Association, the American Stroke Association. And there's also a lot of resources out there for memory, people that have memory issues, of course, the Alzheimer's Association, and even the National Institute on Aging. That's where I go to for a lot of the research that I read about what's normal in aging, what's not, and what can be done to help with certain cognitive changes that we may experience. So now I want to pass it back over to Joanne Asher, who's going to tell us about some of the services that we offer at Molloy University, but also what we're going to and what we're very excited to be starting here at the JCC.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Brooks. Okay, so we are very excited to partner with the JCC in providing weekly memory groups. So what we'll be doing there is doing some of those cognitive linguistic exercises, talking about different strategies for word finding and memory. And those groups are going to be held on Mondays at 10 a.m. beginning on Monday, October 7th. They will be conducted by our students, one of whom is attending this webinar, Caitlin Stein-Grubner. She is a second-year graduate student who has experience with adults and just finished an externship at Mount Sinai, South Paso. So right there. Dr. Brooks and I will be supervising these groups. And the first step that we're taking is to conduct some short screenings on the individual's speech, language, and memory skills. And that's going to be held on Monday, September 30th, also at 10 a.m. If you're interested in more, if you want further evaluation, if you have some concerns, you can always reach out to me. We are located off campus, so we are at 30 Hempstead Avenue in Suite 243. If you know where Home Goods is, and we all know where Home Goods is, I went there during lunch today. It's dangerous to work so close there. We're kind of right across the street from there. And what we do as speech language pathologists is not only work on speech language and memory, but we also work on swallowing, voice therapy. We do hearing screenings here and audiological screenings. We do all sorts of evaluations for what I just mentioned, and we're also dispensing hearing aids. And if you need us, this is our contact information. And we're really hoping that we'll see you on the 30th for some screenings.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
We're open to any questions you might have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of that. What a lot of wonderful information.
Thank you. So very
There's
much.
nothing in the chat. So Pam, should we just have people raise their hand?
I think raise your hand and unmute. I see Lillian raised her hand and Sloan.
So why don't we start with Lillian? Lillian, if you can unmute yourself,
Just
that would be
unmute.
great.
Lillian, you're still muted.
She's working on it.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So I have a lot of questions. A lot of it came in very quickly. So you meet where? So wait. So the one on the 38th, that's going to be at the JCC.
Well,
Yes.
everything will be
Everything.
at the JCC.
Okay. So I guess I can get all the information then. Like where, like you said near Home Goods, Hempstead.
No,
Oh,
that
no.
is
So
for
that's
the-
if you would like further evaluation. So when we go on the 30th, we're just doing a screening, which means we're spending 10 or 15 minutes with you.
All right.
If you wanted a
I'll get
full
all
evaluation.
I'll get all the information then. But a lot of what you said just doesn't seem to what my husband has. There's no way it's going to come back with any kind of anything. But this is what I've been giving my family to understand what's happening with my husband. It's sort of like it's like a little book, like a children's book. And aphasia, the dog with special aphasia powers. Who writes it? Gil Weisman. Written by Gil Weisman. It's
We know
sorta-
Gail.
We
it
know
sort-
her.
It sort of helps my family understand, but they don't get it. They
Mm,
still speak to him like he's a normal person. I would love to understand and believe that taking a speech class would help him. But because I've known him 45 years, like someone said, you said, I can predict what it is he wants.
mhm.
His words are, let me show you, which means, let me tell you, I want to tell you something. It's let me show you.
Mm.
And right there, like I could see what he means by right there. We figure it out. I would love to learn more. If there's any books on it, I would love to have them so I can also show them to my family. So they can help me and not get upset with him, because then a problem starts. I wind up throwing them out of the house because they're not being nice.
Right. I'm sorry you're experiencing that. That's very challenging.
It is amongst everything else. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that really is.
And definitely speaking slowly and getting his attention, his eyes, it does help.
Yeah.
That helps.
Mm-hmm.
He can't read. He was an attorney. Attorneys read all the time. He cannot read. He cannot
Yeah.
tell time. He doesn't know my name. He doesn't know his name or his birthday or his children's names. So I'm sorry. I'm good.
Don't apologize. That's, I would love to talk to you more, maybe one-on-one if you come down to the JCC, and we're going to be there on Mondays, and maybe we could chat more.
The 30, I'll be there the 30.
Great.
Yeah.
Right. That would be great to meet you in person.
The 30th, yeah.
Yeah. There's
Another question,
I
someone?
see a hand. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Leslie had her hand up.
Oh.
Go ahead, go ahead, Leslie.
Sloan.
I have a question for Caitlin. When my sister had her neurological evaluation, 2 days of testing, her neurocognitive evaluation, they couldn't actually give her a definitive diagnosis of dementia, but the MRI did show areas of microhemorrhages. I'm a healthcare provider myself, but this is out of my wheelhouse. So what they called it, and I totally related to the anomalous aphasia part, because that's the problem she had. She can describe it, she can talk about it, she can say, everything about it, but the retrieval of the word is difficult. They called it expressive aphasia. Now, that's just another term for anomalous aphasia? Okay. All right.
Yes, it's like a general term, Leslie. It's more of just like a general that they have more difficulty expressing, because then there's other aphasias that we call receptive aphasias, and those are the ones like Wernicke's and global that they can't understand or receive the information. So you're absolutely right. That's another term for it, is an expressive aphasia.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that what we were getting, the information that we were getting was
Correct.
The way you described it was, it's definitely what my sister's going through now.
Yeah.
Which is challenging in and of itself, especially since I'm long distance right now.
Right.
So we're doing this long distance caregiving type of thing. But I just wanted to make sure that what she has, according to your definitions, would be anomic. Okay.
Yes, I'd have to meet her to say for sure, but from what you're describing, if it's primarily word finding, but she understands everything that's being said, or even 95% maybe misses something here or there, but that could be anomic. But it could also be that Broca's aphasia I told you about. There's different ranges. So the one I showed was very severe. It's not always that severe. So, and if you even look on YouTube, there's so many different videos that can give you examples. But so those are two different types of expressive aphasias. That's more of getting the words out is the problem.
Well, she will be there on the 30th. So
awesome. Great. I look forward to meeting her.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
I see a hand, but I don't see a name.
Go ahead.
My name is Ellen.
Hi, Ellen.
Go ahead.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Pam. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
I joined in a little bit late because I was having trouble with my Zoom, but I got it together.
I'm so glad you're here.
I listened to everything that you had to say, and I'd love to come down the 30th, but is it locked into a 10 o'clock time? Could it be any later? Could we come in any later?
Joanne, how long do you think we'll be there for about?
It depends on how many people we have.
Right.
I can be there until noon, but that would be it because I have a class at 12:15.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. We're gonna do our best to come.
Okay.
Actually, probably I would actually say 11:45 because I forget how.
I could stay till I could try to stay there until 12.
Okay.
That's nice.
If you have to go.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll see you.
I
see.
see a hand up. Go
Yes.
ahead.
Raj, hey,
Mary Ellen?
do you hear me? Who's talking?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I just wanted to know when you start in October, it's 10 o'clock till, I'm just working on schedule. 11. Okay, so it's an hour. Great. And by the way, Dr. Asher, my daughter had you up, Teresa Quinn.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
So it's my mom who goes to the JCC.
Oh, okay. Is Teresa still in Canada or?
She still is in Canada, yes.
Okay, well, give her my best.
I will. I will.
Okay. Russ, you have a question?
Yeah, Pam. My son-in-law has aphasia. He's 50, he was 59. And the problem that he has is his speech is very formal. He stops and thinks. Bright young man, chemical engineer. Of course, not anymore. But my daughter tries to make it easier. Like if he had something on his body, instead of saying there's a rash, he would say there's a spot. He can't get his words out, you know? And he's very formal. He's very formal. Like if he's going to the store, he makes like, I'm going to a meeting in the store. So my daughter has a lot of patience. But one thing you did say, which is good, you have to speak slowly to them. And I have to tell her that. She's trying. It's very hard. It's very hard.
It's hard.
I think he goes to, is it Malloy, Pam? I'm not sure.
No, I believe he goes to another program.
CW Post? Yeah, for language, and they make him read. I'm going to try to have my daughter come in to see you if she can.
Sure.
Because her hours are very limited. Thank you. You're very good.
Of course. No problem. Thank you.
Let me take my hand down. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Lower hand.
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Okay. So the piece that I think Lillian kind of alluded to it, and I sort of wanted to add to that, you know, there does seem to be a difference between the dementia piece and the aphasia piece.
Yes.
And I think what people are thinking potentially is that how do you differentiate the two and how do you address the aphasia when you have this degree of cognitive impairment there? Lillian, was that what you were trying to ask? That's what I thought, because I was thinking what you were thinking when you said it. So I just wanted to kind of ask that question sort of a little differently. Is there a way to differentiate or to separate them so that you can still do some work with them, even if the cognition is impairing that ability to do it?
So everybody's different, you know, the way and the degree to what their impairments are. So it's kind of hard for me to make like a general statement of what I would do. But to differentiate between somebody who's had a stroke or a traumatic brain injury versus somebody that has, say, frontotemporal lobar dementia, which typically is the type of dementia that results in this primary progressive aphasia, the treatment is going to be different, which I kind of touched on, but I didn't get into in a lot of detail. And the way that it's different is usually when I work with somebody with a stroke with aphasia, I'm focused more on restoring, regaining, getting back the language. When somebody has a diagnosis of dementia, or even like, I think it was Leslie who said, like, it wasn't really a specific diagnosis, but we knew that there was something going on with the brain, whether it be multiple hemorrhages, mini strokes, whatever, a vascular dementia. I have patients like that a lot who they don't have a definitive diagnosis, but they know that they're having these word finding issues. And otherwise, for most people with primary progressive aphasia, their other cognitive skills are kind of okay. They might say that their memory isn't what it used to be, but it's not like somebody who's in the later stages of Alzheimer's who has very severe, significant memory deficits and limited language because they're in the later stages. I'm talking about people that are in earlier stages of a possible dementia diagnosis. Maybe they're still figuring out what's going on, but they know that they're having difficulty communicating. Those people, we can work to help them use compensatory strategies to communicate better. And what's good about doing it earlier is that the person learns these skills, and as their function does get worse, because that is the nature of a progressive neurologic disease, now their family hopefully is on board and involved and can support that person with using these strategies as their language maybe or indefinitely will get worse over time. So does that make more sense to differentiate between how we're working with somebody with a stroke and versus somebody with maybe a dementia diagnosis? Now, coming here today, I wasn't sure if I was going to have people with strokes and people with, that have loved ones with, so I wanted to include both. But also in this group, we're going to be talking about memory strategies and other things like that as well. So there's going to be a focus a lot on word finding and getting your communication better using strategies, and also just by practicing with the group, but then also some of these memory strategies as well. And I think once I get to know the people and what the needs are, I can kind of tailor the group a bit more to what the specific group of people will need. Does that
Yeah.
make sense, Gloria?
Yeah, and I think so. I think what you're saying, and I mean, I think we're both sort of trying to find our way here, but it's also for folks, and I think for caregivers, since we have a lot of caregivers here, it's really identifying for yourselves that degree and level of dementia and the degree that you believe they can absorb some of this direction, because, some are going to be more able, I think, to absorb direction and to absorb strategies, compensatory strategies, and then utilize them, and some will not because of the degree of dementia that they're demonstrating. So I just, I think when people are listening, I think I am assuming, and this is what I'm doing, I'm thinking about clients that I have, is thinking like, well, will this person be able to utilize the strategies? Will this person not? So I don't know if I'm helping by mentioning this, but I just want people to kind of think about this for themselves.
Yeah.
And I also want to get a sense of how will the communication partner know what has happened in a session, and what is their homework or a follow-up or other strategies for continuing the benefit of what has been given during the session.
So typically we do include some sort of carryover activity, a suggestion, a way of practicing, some sort of homework that some people take more seriously than others, but it is always good to practice. I always tell my clients, it's just like going to the gym. You go once a week versus practicing this every day and exercising every day, you're going to see the results more. And yes, the caregivers need to be on board as well. So if people are there to pick up their loved one, that's a great way for me or Joanne to communicate with loved ones, our students too, as well. So they get that experience of talking to, families and caregivers and things like that we can give a little update and kind of talk about what they can do to help their loved one use these different strategies.
Sheila?
Is the screening process, is that individualized or like a group type thing?
It is individualized. So we're going to spend it usually takes about 15 minutes, a little interview, and then we're going to use a standardized screening tool where we ask a bunch of questions that are, memory-based questions, some language-based questions. So it is a cognitive linguistic screen. And then from there, it gives me an idea for each individual, what level they're at. And I can, we can talk to you about what the findings are.
The reason I'm asking is they're going to be, like, if everybody shows up at 10, we're going to be spending a lot of time waiting. So is there like a way of signing up for a specific time?
Joanne, how many students and can you speak to a little bit of how we're going to run it, I guess?
We have 4 students coming. I was thinking about putting them in pairs just because, they are students, and then once they become more comfortable, then they can break out. But we could schedule, slots if you would.
So that's 30th.
Yeah, the 30th.
Yeah.
And where in the JCC would it be? Would it be?
It's going to be in the Sunrise building, the Sunrise Association building in our Center for Brain Health, and everyone will get an email from me with information. I think the appointment register time might be a good thing.
That's a good idea.
Would
like
I
a
be able-
sign-up sheet?
Would I be able to bring my sister with me so she can understand things also with herself and her husband
Sure.
on the 30th?
Sure.
I'm gonna
That's
do
fine
that.
with me.
I'm going to do that because she's also telling me that her husband is doesn't seem right, and I keep telling her to go have an appointment with a neurologist, but he's refusing at this time.
Mm.
Well, they're more than welcome to join and we can, you know, do the screen, give our thoughts and feedback and answer any questions.
Wonderful, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions?
Anybody else?
I think I see Elaine has a question there. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, will this only be in person or can you do the screening, no on Zoom?
I don't know, Joanne, I typically do it in person. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. It's kind of hard to do some of the things that we need the person to do for the screen. It's easier to do in person. So I feel like that's really the best way. Would you agree, Joanne?
Yes, definitely. It's
Yeah.
always better in person.
And the program's in person, so
Yeah.
so people sort of need to understand that, you know, once they're screened, they're sort of hopefully going to be admitted into this program that is an on-site, on the premises program. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think
I
that's
sort
kind
of,
a
I sort
reality.
of anticipated that answer.
No.
But I'm a pathologist, so I'm, yes, I can, if I could watch it, watch what's being done, perhaps I could carry it out with my husband, but apparently not.
Well, I'm sure you could. But it would be hard I think, especially for our students to do it over Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Lots we can do over Zoom, but I think this is one that can't be.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions? Other concerns or questions? No?
I don't know if I mentioned this, but you know, we work by the semester, so it will be about 8 weeks of the sessions after the screenings. And then we'll start up again once we start up our spring semester sometime, you know, in January, early February.
Okay.
Well, we're very excited to have this group and I'm excited. I hope I get to meet a lot of you at the screenings on the 30th. And I hope you enjoyed our talk today. Any other questions?
I can't wait for the 30th. I can't wait.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And
Me
you
too.
know, if anybody else is interested in, you know, the screening on the 30th, please contact me. I think everybody has my contact information at this point. Okay.
I will be definitely coming in with my sister.
I wrote it down.
Excellent.
Okay, everyone. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks, guys, so
All right,
much.
thanks so much for attending.
Dr.
Have a wonderful
Yeah.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
good
great evening, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. I'll email you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
How do we get out of here now?